My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 29 years old. The day of my wedding was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of my entire life. I was marrying Daniel Crawford, my college sweetheart, the man who'd spent 5 years convincing me he was my soulmate. We were surrounded by 250 guests at the prestigious Grandview Estate overlooking the Hudson River. Everything was absolutely perfect. The flowers, the music, the champagne flowing like water. My dress cost $15,000. The venue cost my father $80,000. This was the fairy tale I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. Until my 4-year-old flower girl, Daniel's niece Emma, tugged on my wedding dress during the reception and whispered 8 words that shattered my entire world. Mommy says Daddy kissed Aunt Sarah in the closet, and they're going to take all Grandpa William's money when he dies. I looked down at this innocent child with her blonde curls and flower crown, still holding her little basket of rose petals. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. Daddy was Daniel. Aunt Sarah was my older sister. Grandpa William was my father, the man who just walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. And Emma's mommy was Daniel's sister-in-law, Jennifer, who was standing 20 feet away, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. She'd clearly told Emma to keep this secret. Children don't understand secrets the way adults do. They don't understand betrayal and conspiracy. They just know when something feels wrong, when the adults around them are doing bad things. And this precious little girl, who loved me because I always gave her candy and let her try on my jewelry, had just handed me the grenade that would blow up my entire wedding. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't run. Instead, I smiled. I actually smiled bright and beautiful like the blushing bride I was supposed to be. I bent down and kissed Emma's forehead and whispered, "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You're such a good, brave girl. Now go find Auntie Jennifer and tell her I said everything's going to be okay." Emma nodded, relieved, and skipped away through the crowd of dancing guests. I stood there in my $15,000 dress, holding my bouquet of white peonies, watching my new husband laugh with my father across the ballroom. Daniel looked so handsome in his custom tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, that charming smile that made everyone love him. My sister Sarah stood nearby, elegant in her maid of honor dress, the deep emerald green that complemented her auburn hair. She was talking to my father's attorney, probably gathering information, probably planning. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I found Jennifer in the women's lounge, frantically reapplying her lipstick with shaking hands. When she saw me in the mirror, she dropped the lipstick tube. It clattered on the marble counter, rolling into the sink. Her face went sheet white. "Victoria, How long?" I interrupted quietly, closing the door behind me and locking it. "How long have you known?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. 6 months. I overheard Sarah on the phone with Daniel one night when she was visiting our house. They thought I was asleep. They were talking about your father's estate, about the trust fund, about how after the wedding they'd have legal access to everything through you and Sarah's inheritance rights. 6 months. This woman had known for 6 months that my fiancé and my sister were having an affair, planning to rob my family blind, and she'd said nothing. She'd watched me plan this wedding. She'd come to my bridal shower. She'd smiled at me and congratulated me and stayed silent while I walked into this trap. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was remarkably calm. I felt like I was floating above my own body, watching this conversation happen to someone else. "Because I was terrified," Jennifer sobbed. "Daniel is my husband's brother. If I exposed him, it would destroy the family. Sarah threatened me. She said if I told anyone, she'd make sure my children were taken from me. She'd claim I was an unfit mother, that I was mentally unstable. She has connections, Victoria. Your sister knows powerful people. I believed her. My sister, Sarah. My beautiful, accomplished older sister who'd always been the golden child. Sarah, who graduated summa cum laude from Columbia Law School. Sarah, who worked at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. Sarah, who was supposed to be my maid of honor, my protector, my best friend." "Tell me everything," I said, sitting down on the velvet settee. "Every single detail. Right now." Jennifer collapsed beside me and told me the truth I should have seen all along. Daniel and Sarah had been having an affair for 2 years. It started at my father's 60th birthday party, when they'd both had too much champagne and ended up in my father's study together. What began as a drunken hookup evolved into something far more sinister when they realized they could combine their talents. Daniel's charm and my trust, Sarah's legal expertise, and her position as my father's estate attorney to systematically drain the Hayes family fortune. My father, William Hayes, was worth approximately $47 million. He'd built his wealth through a chain of luxury car dealerships across the Northeast, and he was planning to retire next year at 63. His estate plan left everything equally divided between Sarah and me, with additional trust funds for any grandchildren. Daniel knew all of this because I'd told him everything. I'd shared every private family detail, every financial discussion, every plan my father made. I'd trusted him completely. "They're waiting for the perfect moment," Jennifer whispered. "Once you're legally married, Daniel becomes family. He'll have access to information, to accounts, to everything. And Sarah's been positioning herself as your father's primary attorney. She's been slowly changing documents, creating loopholes, setting up shell companies. They've been planning this for 2 years, Victoria. Your wedding isn't the beginning. It's the endgame." The endgame. I was the endgame. The final piece of their elaborate con. Marry the naive younger daughter, wait for the father to die or retire, and take everything. "What about love?" I heard myself ask. "Was any of it real?" Jennifer looked at me with such pity it almost broke through my shock. "I heard them laughing about it once. Daniel said you were adorably gullible. Sarah said you'd always been easy to manipulate since you were children, that you believe anything she told you because you worshipped her." Adorably gullible. Easy to manipulate. Those words branded themselves into my brain. Every memory of Daniel, our first date, our first kiss, the night he proposed on the Brooklyn Bridge with that platinum ring, all of it replayed in my mind under this new, horrible light. Had he ever loved me? Had a single moment been genuine? Or was I just a mark, a target, a stupid, trusting fool? I stood up slowly, smoothing my wedding dress. Jennifer grabbed my hand. "What are you going to do? If you confront them now, they'll deny everything. It'll be their word against mine. Sarah will destroy me for talking." "No," I said quietly. "She won't. Because you're not going to be the one who exposes them. I am." I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back into the reception with my head high and my smile perfect. The band was playing a slow jazz number. Guests were eating the $200 per plate dinner. My father was laughing with Daniel's parents, completely unaware that he'd just given his daughter away to a con artist. And there, near the bar, stood my sister Sarah and my new husband Daniel, their heads close together, whispering. I walked straight up to them. They immediately separated, plastering on innocent smiles. "There's my beautiful wife," Daniel said, pulling me close and kissing my cheek. His lips felt like ice against my skin. "I was just telling Sarah how lucky I am." "So lucky," Sarah agreed, her green eyes sparkling. My sister was breathtaking, always had been. She was 3 years older, more sophisticated, more accomplished, more everything. Growing up, I'd always felt like the inferior copy. She was the brilliant lawyer. I was the art gallery curator. She dated powerful men. I dated Daniel, who I thought was perfect for me. Steady, reliable, kind. What a joke. "I need to talk to both of you," I said sweetly, privately. "There's something important we need to discuss before the night goes any further." Daniel and Sarah exchanged the quickest glance, so fast most people would miss it. But I saw it. I saw the flash of concern in Daniel's eyes, the slight tension in Sarah's jaw. They thought I knew. They thought somehow I'd figured it out. Good. Let them worry. "Of course, darling," Daniel said smoothly. "Where should we go?" "The bridal suite?" I suggested. "It's private. No one will interrupt us there." We walked through the reception, me in the middle, Daniel and Sarah flanking me like guards. Guests called out congratulations. The photographer snapped pictures of the beautiful bride walking with her handsome groom and elegant sister. If only they knew. The bridal suite was on the 3rd floor of the Grandview Estate, a luxurious room where I'd gotten ready that morning, surrounded by my bridesmaids and my mother's memory. My mother had died when I was 16, and Sarah had stepped into that maternal role, guiding me through high school and college. Or so I'd thought. Now I realized she'd been grooming me, training me to trust her unconditionally. I closed the door behind us and locked it. Daniel noticed and raised an eyebrow. "Victoria, what's going on? You're acting strange." "Am I?" I turned to face them both. "I suppose I'm acting a bit differently than the adorably gullible girl you're used to." The words hung in the air. Sarah's face went pale. Daniel's charming smile froze. "What did you say?" Sarah asked carefully. Adorably gullible, I repeated. That's what you called me, isn't it, Daniel? And Sarah, you said I was easy to manipulate, that I'd always believed everything you told me. Dead silence. I watched the panic spread across their faces, watched them frantically try to calculate how much I knew, how I'd found out, what their next move should be. Victoria, I don't know what you think you heard, but, Daniel started. Emma told me, I interrupted. Your niece, 4 years old. She told me that her mommy saw you kissing Aunt Sarah in the closet. She told me you were planning to take all of Grandpa William's money. Children are terrible at keeping secrets, Daniel. You should have been more careful. Daniel's jaw clenched. Sarah stepped forward, switching into damage control mode, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Victoria, listen to me. You're misunderstanding. Emma is 4 years old. She doesn't understand what she saw. Daniel and I were having a private conversation about a legal matter regarding Dad's estate, and she must have seen us standing close together and misinterpreted. Stop lying to me, I said, and my voice was cold steel. I know everything. Jennifer told me everything. The affair that started 2 years ago at Dad's birthday party, the plan to use my marriage to access the family money, the shell companies you've been setting up, Sarah, the documents you've been altering. I know all of it. Sarah's mask cracked. Her expression shifted from concerned sister to something much harder, much colder. Jennifer has no proof of anything. She's a bitter, jealous woman who... She has proof, I lied smoothly. Recordings, photos, documentation of every illegal thing you've done. And so do I now. I didn't actually have any of that. Not yet, but I needed them to believe I did. I needed them scared and off balance. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, his polished composure shattering. Victoria, baby, please listen. Yes, Sarah and I got close. Yes, maybe we crossed some lines, but I love you. I married you today because I love you. Whatever Jennifer told you, it's exaggerated. We can work through this. You love me? I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to my own ears. You married me 4 hours ago as part of a con. You've been pretending to love me for 5 years so you could steal my inheritance. Don't you dare stand there in that tuxedo and talk to me about love. Sarah moved toward the door. I'm not doing this. This is insane. I'm your sister, Victoria. We'll discuss this rationally when you've calmed down and... You're not going anywhere, I said quietly. Because if you walk out that door right now, I'm going to the microphone downstairs and I'm going to tell all 250 guests exactly what you've both done. I'm going to tell my father that his trusted daughter has been embezzling from him. I'm going to tell Daniel's parents that their son is a con artist. And then I'm going to call the police. That stopped her. Sarah turned slowly, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw real fear in my older sister's eyes. You wouldn't, she said. That would destroy the family. It would destroy Dad. The scandal, the humiliation. You should have thought about that before you decided to rob him blind, I shot back. You should have thought about that before you decided your own sister was an acceptable casualty in your scheme. Daniel stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Okay, let's all just calm down and think rationally. We can fix this, Victoria. We can make this right. What do you want? Money? We can give you money. Just don't blow this up. Think about what it would do to your father. What I wanted. That was an excellent question. What did I want? I wanted my sister back. The sister I'd loved and admired my whole life. But that sister never existed, did she? She'd always been this person, calculating, manipulative, willing to betray her own blood for money. I wanted my husband to actually love me. But this man standing in front of me wasn't my husband in any real sense. He was a stranger wearing a familiar face. I wanted my life back. But I couldn't rewind time. I couldn't unknow what I knew. I couldn't unfeel this devastating betrayal. So what did I want? I wanted them to pay. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to lose everything, the way they planned to make me lose everything. I want you both to stay here and wait, I said finally. Don't leave this room, don't call anyone, don't try to run. In exactly 15 minutes, you're going to find out what I want. Victoria, please, Daniel started. 15 minutes, I repeated. If either of you leaves before then, I go public immediately. Stay here, and you might survive this. Maybe. I unlocked the door and walked out, leaving them trapped in that room together, probably scrambling to figure out their next move, their next lie, their escape route. But they had no idea what was about to happen, because what I hadn't told them what I'd only just realized myself, was that my father had security cameras throughout the Grandview Estate, including one in the coat closet where Daniel and Sarah had been kissing, according to little Emma. And my father's head of security, Marcus, was a former NYPD detective who was fiercely loyal to our family. I found Marcus near the kitchen, coordinating with the catering staff. When he saw my face, his expression immediately shifted to alert concern. "Mrs. Crawford, is everything all right? Mrs. Crawford." That name felt like poison now. "No, Marcus, everything is very wrong. I need your help. I need you to pull the security footage from the coat closet, from approximately 2 hours ago." Marcus didn't ask questions. He just nodded and pulled out his phone, accessing the estate's security system. Within 60 seconds, he was showing me the screen. There they were. Crystal clear video of Daniel and Sarah in the coat closet, pressed against each other, kissing deeply. Daniel's hands were in her hair. Her arms were wrapped around his neck. This wasn't a quick peck. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was passionate, familiar, practiced. This was two people who'd done this many times before. The timestamp showed it was taken at 5:47 p.m., less than an hour before I'd walked down the aisle. My husband had been passionately kissing my sister less than an hour before marrying me. "Mrs. Crawford," Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "What do you need me to do?" "How quickly can you get this footage on the reception screens?" Marcus's eyes gleamed with understanding. 3 minutes. We can override the current display. The whole ballroom will see it." "Do it," I said. "But first, I need you to find my father and bring him somewhere private. He needs to see this before everyone else does. He deserves that much." Marcus nodded and disappeared. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding, my mind racing. This was it. The moment of no return. Once I did this, there was no taking it back. My wedding, my family, my entire life would implode in front of 250 witnesses. But staying silent would be worse. Staying silent would mean letting them win, letting them steal from my father, letting them destroy everything my mother built, everything my father worked for, letting them get away with treating me like I was nothing more than a useful idiot. No, I refused to be the adorably gullible girl anymore. Marcus returned with my father. William Hayes looked concerned but not alarmed. He probably thought I was having typical bride jitters or some minor wedding crisis. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Marcus said you needed to see me urgently." I took my father's hand and led him into the estate manager's office. Marcus followed, closing the door behind us. "Dad, I need you to watch something, and I need you to stay calm until you've seen all of it." My father's expression shifted to serious concern. "Victoria, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Marcus pulled up the security footage on the office computer and pressed play. I watched my father's face as he saw his eldest daughter kissing his new son-in-law in the coat closet. I watched the confusion turn to shock, then to comprehension, and finally to cold, terrible rage. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. When the video ended, he was breathing hard, his face flushed red. "How long?" he asked quietly. The calm before the storm. 2 years, I said. "They've been planning this since your 60th birthday party, Dad. It's not just an affair. They're trying to steal from you. Sarah's been altering estate documents, setting up shell companies. Daniel married me to get access to the family money. I'm just the key to the vault." My father closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked every one of his 63 years. Then he opened them again, and the William Hayes I knew, the shrewd businessman who'd built an empire from nothing, was back in full force. "Tell me everything," he said. "Every detail, right now." So I did. I told him about Emma's innocent revelation, about Jennifer's confession, about confronting Daniel and Sarah upstairs, about their planned, systematic theft of everything he'd built. When I finished, my father was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Richard, it's William Hayes. I need you at the Grandview Estate immediately. Bring your team. We have a situation. No, not a medical emergency, a legal one. My daughter Sarah has been embezzling from me, and I need to know the full extent of the damage. Yes, I'm serious. Get here now." Richard Morrison was my father's personal attorney, the one who actually managed his legitimate estate planning. Not Sarah. She'd been advocating for months to take over all of his legal affairs, and now I understood why. My father ended the call and looked at me. "You want to expose them publicly? At your wedding reception?" "They destroyed my wedding already," I said. The marriage is a sham. At least this way, everyone will know the truth. At least they won't get away with it. My father nodded slowly. Then we do this properly. We do this in a way that ensures they face full consequences, legal, financial, and social. Marcus, how many people can that video display reach? Every screen in the ballroom, the lobby, and the outdoor terrace, Marcus replied. All 250 guests would see it simultaneously. Perfect, my father said grimly. Victoria, are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Once this happens, there's no going back. Your marriage to Daniel will be over. Your relationship with Sarah will be destroyed. This will be public, messy, and painful. Dad, my marriage was never real to begin with, I said, quietly. And the sister I loved never existed. I'm already destroyed. At least this way, I'm not destroyed alone and in silence. At least this way, they pay. My father pulled me into a hug, the kind of protective embrace he hadn't given me since I was a little girl. Your mother would be so proud of you right now. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. We returned to the reception together, my father's arm around my shoulders. The party was in full swing. The band was playing upbeat music. Guests were dancing and laughing. Daniel and Sarah were still presumably locked in the bridal suite, probably calling lawyers, probably planning their defense. They had no idea the hammer was about to fall. My father walked to the band and asked them to stop playing. He took the microphone, and the room gradually quieted down as 250 guests turned to look at him. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate what we believed was the union of my daughter, Victoria, and Daniel Crawford. However, I'm afraid I have some disturbing news to share. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel's parents looked alarmed. My bridesmaids were staring at me with concern. My father nodded to Marcus. The screens around the ballroom flickered to life, and there it was. In high definition, on 6 different screens throughout the venue, Daniel and Sarah kissing passionately in the coat closet. The timestamp was clearly visible, 5:00 p.m., less than an hour before the ceremony. The ballroom erupted in gasps and shocked exclamations. People were pointing at the screens, looking around for Daniel and Sarah, looking at me to see my reaction. I stood there in my wedding dress, my chin high, refusing to look broken even though I felt shattered inside. My father's voice cut through the chaos. What you're witnessing is my eldest daughter, Sarah, and my new son-in-law, Daniel Crawford, engaging in an affair that has been ongoing for approximately 2 years. However, this is not simply a case of infidelity. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. This is a case of conspiracy and fraud. Sarah, as some of you know, is an attorney. She has been systematically altering my estate planning documents, creating shell companies, and positioning herself to embezzle from the Hayes family fortune. Daniel married my daughter Victoria today, not out of love, but as part of a calculated plan to gain access to family assets. My daughter has been the victim of an elaborate, multi-year con. The room exploded with noise. People were shouting questions. Daniel's mother was crying. His father looked ready to commit murder. My bridesmaids surrounded me, asking if I was okay, if this was real, what they could do to help. And then the bridal suite door burst open on the second-floor balcony overlooking the ballroom. Daniel and Sarah ran out, clearly having heard the commotion. They stopped dead when they saw the screens. When they realized every single guest was staring at video evidence of their betrayal. Sarah's face went from pale to red. Dad, this is not what it looks like. We can explain. Explain? My father's voice boomed through the microphone. Explain why you've been stealing from me. Explain why you seduced your sister's fiancé. Explain why you destroyed your own family for money. Daniel grabbed Sarah's arm, clearly ready to bolt. But Marcus had positioned security at every exit. They weren't going anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, my father continued, his voice cold and controlled. I've already contacted my attorney and the police. What you've witnessed tonight is evidence in an ongoing criminal investigation. Daniel Crawford and Sarah Hayes will be facing charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Right on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars were pulling up to the estate entrance. Sarah's shock turned to panic. She looked at me, her little sister, standing in the ballroom in her wedding dress, watching her entire world collapse. Victoria, she called down from the balcony, her voice desperate. Please, don't let them do this. I'm your sister. We're family. You can't. You stopped being my family when you decided I was just a tool to rob our father, I called back, my voice carrying through the now silent ballroom. You stopped being my sister when you spent 2 years sleeping with my fiancé. You stopped being anything to me except a criminal." 3 police officers entered the ballroom led by Marcus. They approached the staircase where Daniel and Sarah stood frozen. "Sarah Hayes and Daniel Crawford," one officer said. "You need to come with us. We have some questions about financial irregularities and fraud." "This is ridiculous," Daniel said, his charm completely gone, replaced by ugly desperation. "We haven't done anything illegal. You can't just arrest us based on some security footage and family drama." "We're not arresting you yet," the officer said calmly. "We're asking you to come in for questioning, but we can arrest you if you prefer. Your choice." My father stepped forward. "They'll find everything, Sarah. Every fake document, every shell company, every fraudulent transfer. I've already had my forensic accountants pull all the records. Did you really think you were smarter than me, that I wouldn't eventually notice?" Sarah's face crumbled. The brilliant, untouchable older sister I'd known my entire life looked suddenly small and defeated. "I needed the money, Dad. The law firm partnership required a significant capital contribution. I didn't have it, and you were just sitting on millions, not using it." "So you decided to steal it," my father said coldly, "and destroy your sister's life in the process? What kind of monster are you?" "I'm your daughter," Sarah screamed. "I'm the one who made something of myself. I'm the one who went to Columbia. I'm the successful one. Victoria was always the favorite, always the precious baby, and I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. I deserved that money more than she did." There it was, the truth beneath the con. Sarah hadn't just wanted money. She'd wanted revenge. Revenge for every time our parents had praised me, every time I'd gotten attention she thought belonged to her. She'd been nursing this resentment for years, and when the opportunity arose to destroy me while enriching herself, she'd taken it. "You deserve nothing," my father said quietly, "because you earned nothing through honesty. Everything you built was on lies and manipulation, and now you'll lose it all." The police officers took Sarah and Daniel away. Sarah was crying, mascara running down her face. Daniel was silent, staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched. As they were led past me, Daniel stopped. "I did love you," he said quietly, looking at me with something that almost looked like regret. "In my own way. You made it easy. You were kind and trusting and adorably gullible," I finished for him. "Save it, Daniel. You loved my father's money. That's all you ever loved." They were escorted out of the ballroom, leaving behind 250 stunned guests and 1 destroyed wedding reception. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father spoke into the microphone again. "I apologize to all of you for this disruption. I understand if you wish to leave. However, I want to say something to my daughter Victoria first." He turned to face me, handing me the microphone. I stood there, this bride in her expensive dress, at her ruined wedding, and I didn't know what to say. What do you say when your entire life implodes in front of everyone you know? "I'm sorry," I finally said, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry you all came here to celebrate love, and instead you witnessed betrayal. I'm sorry this day was ruined. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner." "No," my father interrupted, taking the microphone back. "You have nothing to apologize for. You are the victim here. You are the one who was lied to, manipulated, and betrayed by people you trusted. And yet you're standing here, strong and dignified, facing this with courage." He looked out at the crowd. "My daughter Victoria is only 29 years old. She has her entire life ahead of her. And while today was supposed to begin her marriage, instead it marks the beginning of her freedom. Freedom from people who never deserved her love. Freedom from a relationship built on lies. Freedom to build a real life with real people who genuinely care about her." Applause started slowly, then built. My friends were clapping. My father's business associates, even some of Daniel's relatives who looked absolutely mortified by what he'd done. The applause grew louder until it filled the ballroom. I stood there, tears finally streaming down my face, and let myself feel it all. The grief for the life I'd thought I'd have. The rage at being used and manipulated. The humiliation of having my private betrayal exposed to 250 people. And underneath it all, the tiniest spark of relief, because at least now I knew the truth. At least now I could begin to heal. The reception didn't continue as a celebration, obviously. Guests gradually left, offering condolences and support. My bridesmaids stayed with me as I changed out of my wedding dress in the bridal suite, the same room where I'd confronted Daniel and Sarah just an hour earlier. "We're going to get you through this," my best friend Chloe promised, helping me unzip the dress. "We're going to burn this dress, drink all the champagne, and then we're going to systematically destroy both of their lives." I laughed weakly. "The police are handling that." "Oh, the police are handling the legal destruction," Chloe agreed. "But we're handling the social destruction. By tomorrow, every single person in their professional and personal circles will know exactly what they did. Daniel will never work in this city again. And Sarah, her legal career is over." She was right. In the age of social media, a scandal like this would spread instantly. By morning, video of the security footage and the arrest would be everywhere. Sarah's reputation as a trusted attorney would be demolished. Daniel's family would disown him. They'd be pariahs. It should have made me feel better. It didn't. I just felt numb and empty. My father found me an hour later, sitting alone in the estate manager's office, still in my wedding dress because I couldn't bring myself to fully accept that this day had happened. "Richard pulled the full audit," he said, sitting beside me. "Sarah has stolen approximately $2.3 million for the past 18 months. She created shell companies, forged my signature on transfer documents, and moved money through multiple accounts to obscure the trail. $2.3 million. My sister had stolen $2.3 million from our father." "How did you not notice?" I asked. "Because she was smart about it," my father admitted. "She took smaller amounts that wouldn't trigger immediate alerts. She buried the transfers in legitimate business expenses. And I trusted her. That's what hurts most, Victoria. I trusted my own daughter, and she robbed me blind." We sat in silence for a moment. "What happens now?" I finally asked. "Now we prosecute," my father said grimly. "Richard is coordinating with the district attorney's office. Between the financial evidence and the security footage proving conspiracy, we have an ironclad case. They'll both go to prison. Prison. My sister would go to prison. The man I'd almost married would go to prison." "And what about me?" I whispered. "What do I do now?" My father put his arm around me. "You heal, you take time, you remember that you did nothing wrong, and eventually you rebuild." Over the next 3 months, I watched my entire life systematically dismantled and rebuilt. The annulment was processed quickly since the marriage had been based on fraud. Legally, I'd never been married to Daniel at all, the criminal. Investigation moved forward rapidly. The district attorney's office discovered that Sarah and Daniel's scheme was even more extensive than originally thought. They'd been planning to have my father declared mentally incompetent within a year, using forged medical evaluations and Sarah's power of attorney to take control of all his assets. If I'd discovered their affair just a few months later, it might have been too late. Richard Morrison, my father's attorney, held a press conference exposing everything. The legal community was rocked. Sarah was disbarred immediately. Several of her former clients filed malpractice suits when they realized she'd been using their confidential information to train herself in fraud techniques. Daniel's architectural firm collapsed. No one wanted to work with a man who'd married someone purely to rob her family. His business partners publicly severed ties. His parents released a statement condemning his actions and cutting him off financially. The trial happened 6 months after my ruined wedding. I testified about how Daniel had courted me, how he'd seemed perfect, how he'd isolated me from friends who questioned the relationship. I testified about Sarah's manipulation, how she'd positioned herself as my protector while actually being my predator. Jennifer testified as well, describing what she'd overheard, the fear Sarah had used to keep her silent, the threats against her children. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, financial records, email trails, text messages. Everything Daniel and Sarah had carefully hidden came pouring out. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Sarah received 8 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Daniel received 7 years for fraud and conspiracy. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to my father. I wasn't in the courtroom when the verdicts were read. I couldn't watch. But my father called me immediately after. "It's over," he said simply. "Justice is served." Justice. The word felt hollow. Yes, they'd face consequences. Yes, they'd lose their freedom. But I'd already lost something that could never be returned. My ability to trust completely, my belief in family bonds, my confidence in my own judgment. But I was learning to build something new from the ruins. I sold the apartment Daniel and I had been planning to move into after the wedding. I took that money and traveled. Paris, Tokyo, Barcelona, places I'd always wanted to visit, but Daniel had made excuses to avoid. Turned out he'd been avoiding them because Sarah couldn't easily join us on trips abroad. I went back to school and finished my master's degree in art history that I'd abandoned when Daniel convinced me I didn't need it. Turned out he'd wanted me less educated, less independent, easier to control. I rebuilt my friendships that had withered under Daniel's subtle discouragement. Chloe and I became closer than ever. She helped me learn to trust again, slowly, carefully, and I started dating again, though I was cautious, maybe too cautious. The first time a man complimented me, I analyzed it for hidden motives. The first time someone wanted to meet my father, I panicked, convinced it was another con. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, yes, I had to find a therapist who wasn't named Sarah, which was surprisingly difficult, helped me understand that what happened with Daniel and my sister wasn't my fault. You weren't gullible, she told me in one of our sessions. You were loving. You were trusting. Those are beautiful qualities, Victoria. Don't let terrible people convince you that being kind and open makes you weak. 2 years after that nightmare wedding day, I was having coffee with my father at his favorite cafe when he told me something that changed how I saw everything. I knew, he said quietly. I stared at him. What? Not about the affair, he clarified quickly, but I knew Sarah was stealing. I'd known for 3 months before your wedding. My blood went cold. You knew Sarah was robbing you and you said nothing? I was building a case, my father explained. If I'd confronted her immediately, she would have destroyed evidence, hidden assets, possibly fled. I needed her to feel secure enough to continue so I could document everything. I had forensic accountants tracking every move. But you let me marry Daniel, I said, my voice rising. You walked me down the aisle to a man you knew was conning me. No, my father said firmly. I didn't know about Daniel specifically until Emma told you. I suspected Sarah had an accomplice, but I didn't know it was him until that day. The moment I knew, we acted. I sat back trying to process this. My father had been playing his own long game, gathering evidence, preparing to strike. He'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time, just like Sarah thought she was. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm sorry I didn't protect you from the emotional damage. But if I'd revealed Sarah's crimes earlier, she might have gotten away with it. This way, we got justice, complete justice. I understood the strategy, I even respected it, but it still hurt that he'd known and said nothing. Did you know I'd find out at the wedding? I asked. No, he admitted. That was pure chance. But once you did, once you came to me, I knew we had to act immediately. You deserved the truth. You deserved to not build a life on lies. We sat in silence for a while. Do you hate me? My father finally asked. I looked at this man who'd raised me alone after my mother died, who'd built an empire to give me and Sarah every opportunity, who'd been fighting a secret war to protect our family even when it meant letting me walk into pain. No, I said honestly, I don't hate you. I understand why you did it. I just wish things had been different. So do I, he said sadly. Every single day. 3 years after the wedding, I received a letter from Sarah. She was allowed limited correspondence from prison, and she'd written to me. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter was surprisingly short. Victoria, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that what I felt for you wasn't entirely fake. Underneath the jealousy and resentment, I did love you. I loved you as my little sister, and that love made what I did even more unforgivable. I destroyed you to feed my own ego. I convinced myself you had it easier, that you didn't deserve Dad's affection, that taking from you was somehow justified. None of that was true. You earned every bit of love you received by being genuinely kind and good. I earned nothing because I chose to be bitter and cruel. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm not asking you to visit or write back. I just needed you to know that my choices were mine alone, not yours. Never yours. You were always the better sister. You still are, Sarah. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't write back. I didn't visit. But I kept the letter because it was the first honest thing Sarah had said to me in years. Maybe someday I'd forgive her. Maybe not. Either way, my healing didn't depend on her redemption. 4 years after the wedding, I met someone. His name was Marcus Chen. Yes, the same last name as my therapist, which we joked about constantly. He was a professor of classical literature at Columbia, kind and patient, and genuinely interested in me as a person, not as a gateway to my father's money. Our first date, I was completely paranoid. I Googled him extensively. I ran a background check. I even asked my father's security team to investigate him. He came back completely clean, no criminal record, no suspicious financial activity, just a regular guy who taught Shakespeare and liked hiking. On our third date, I told him everything about Daniel, about Sarah, about the wedding. I expected him to run. Instead, he listened quietly and then said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. I know trust doesn't come easily for you." That simple acknowledgement, that he understood my walls weren't about him, but about what had been done to me, meant everything. We took things slowly, so slowly that Chloe joked we were moving at geological speed. But slow was what I needed. I needed to be sure. I needed to know that what I was feeling was real and what he was showing me was genuine. A year into our relationship, Marcus proposed. Simple, honest, just the two of us hiking in the mountains. "I love you," he said. "I want to build a life with you. No games, no manipulation, just partnership. What do you think?" I looked at this man who'd been patient with my paranoia, who'd met my walls with understanding, who'd proven over and over that he was exactly who he said he was. "Yes," I said. "But can we have a very small wedding, like immediate family only?" He laughed. "We can get married at City Hall if that makes you comfortable." We did eventually have a small wedding, 30 people. My father walked me down the aisle again, but this time to a man who actually loved me. Chloe was my maid of honor. Marcus's parents cried happy tears, no drama, no betrayals, no arrests, just love. Real, honest, uncomplicated love. Standing at that altar, holding Marcus's hands, I thought about the girl I'd been 4 years ago, the one who'd believed in fairy tales and trusted blindly. She was gone. But the woman who'd emerged from her ashes was stronger, smarter, more careful. I'd learned that trust is something earned slowly, not given instantly. I'd learned that love requires honesty and transparency, not just passion and romance. I'd learned that family isn't always who you're born to, but who chooses to stand by you when everything falls apart. And I'd learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding, building a better life, becoming a better person, refusing to let betrayal turn you bitter. Daniel is still in prison. He'll be released in 3 years. I heard through mutual connections that he's trying to write a book about his unfair prosecution. No publisher will touch it. Sarah will be released in 4 years. I don't know what she'll do after that. I don't particularly care. She's not my problem anymore. My father is thriving. He sold his car dealerships last year and retired fully. He spends his time traveling, golfing, and spoiling my daughter. Yes, Marcus and I had a baby girl last year. Her name is Eleanor, after my mother. When I hold Eleanor, I think about the kind of woman I want her to become. Strong, but not hard. Trusting, but not naive. Kind, but not a doormat. And I think about the story I'll tell her someday, when she's old enough to understand, about how her mother was betrayed by people she loved, about how she survived, about how she built something real from the ruins of something fake. I'll tell her that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you trusted most. And that's not your fault. It's theirs. I'll tell her that strength isn't about never being broken. It's about choosing to rebuild. And I'll tell her about the little flower girl who couldn't keep a secret, the 4-year-old who whispered the truth that saved me. Because sometimes heroes come in the smallest packages. Emma is 9 now. She doesn't really remember that day, doesn't understand that her innocent words changed everything. But Jennifer knows. She thanks me every time we see each other for protecting her, for not letting Sarah carry out her threats. 5 years after that terrible wedding day, I'm finally, genuinely happy. I have a husband who loves me, a daughter who's healthy and beautiful, a father who's proud of me, friends who stood by me through the worst. And I have my story, this story, the one I'm sharing now, so that someone out there who's being manipulated, who's being conned, who's trusting someone they shouldn't, might recognize the signs I missed. If you're reading this and something feels wrong in your relationship, trust that feeling. If someone isolates you from friends and family, that's a red flag. If someone discourages your independence or education, that's a red flag. If your partner gets unusually close to your family members, especially ones with money or power, that's a red flag. Don't ignore your instincts like I did. Don't make excuses for behavior that makes you uncomfortable. Don't assume that because someone says they love you, they actually do. Real love is transparent. Real love encourages your growth. Real love doesn't scheme or manipulate or con. And if you do find yourself betrayed like I was, know that you can survive it. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But you can rebuild. You can heal. You can find real love after fake love destroys you. I did. My name is Victoria Hayes Chen. I'm 34 years old, and the day my wedding was destroyed was the day my real life began. What I didn't tell you in that first part of my story is what happened during those 3 months between the wedding disaster and the trial. Those were the darkest, most transformative months of my entire life. The months where I discovered exactly how deep the betrayal went and how much stronger I was than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined. The morning after my wedding imploded, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my father's house. For a confused moment, I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing. Then I saw my wedding dress crumpled in the corner where I'd thrown it at 3 a.m., and reality crashed back down on me like a building collapse. My phone had 247 missed calls, 189 text messages. My social media was flooded with tags, mentions, comments. The video of Daniel and Sarah kissing had gone viral overnight. Someone had recorded my father's speech and the arrest on their phone and posted it everywhere. Within 12 hours, I'd become a national news story. Bride exposes groom's affair with sister at reception, read the headlines. My face was on tabloid covers. Entertainment news shows were dissecting every detail. Strangers on the internet were giving their opinions about my life, my choices, my appearance, my everything. Half the comments were sympathetic. Poor girl, she's so brave. I hope she destroys them both. What a strong woman. The other half were cruel beyond belief. She must have known and wanted attention. Probably a publicity stunt for social media. She's too plain, no wonder he cheated with the hot sister. Gold digger family got what they deserved. I made the mistake of reading the comments for about an hour before Chloe physically took my phone away from me. Stop torturing yourself, she said firmly. These people don't know you. They don't know what happened. They're just vultures feeding on drama. But the damage was done. I'd seen myself through the eyes of thousands of strangers, and their judgment, fair or not, had burrowed into my brain. My father hired a PR crisis management team. They advised me to make no public statements, do no interviews, let the legal process speak for itself. The truth will come out in court, they assured me. Right now, anything you say will be twisted and used against you. So I stayed silent while the world talked about me. But staying silent didn't mean staying still. 3 days after the wedding, I went to Daniel's apartment, technically our apartment, since we'd been planning to move in together after the honeymoon. I had a key. I also had Marcus, my father's security chief, and 2 other guards with me because I didn't trust Daniel not to show up. He didn't. He was in jail, bail denied, because the judge deemed him a flight risk. Good. I walked through that apartment, seeing it with completely new eyes. The furniture we'd picked out together. Had he been texting Sarah while I debated between the gray couch or the blue one? The kitchen where we'd cooked meals? Had he been planning his con while I'd been planning our future? In his office, I found his laptop. Marcus had a tech specialist with him who quickly bypassed Daniel's passwords. What we found made my blood run cold. There were files, dozens of files. Hayes family, assets. William Hayes, weaknesses. Victoria, manipulation strategy. Timeline, endgame. I opened the Victoria file with shaking hands. Inside was a detailed psychological profile of me. My insecurities, my blind spots, my desperate need to be loved after losing my mother. Notes about which compliments worked best on me, which gifts made me most grateful, how to isolate me from friends without making it obvious, how to make me financially dependent by subtly discouraging my career. It was all there. An instruction manual for destroying Victoria Hayes. There was even a section titled Sexual Strategy that made me want to vomit. Detailed notes about what I liked, what made me feel loved, how to use intimacy as a control mechanism. I hadn't just been conned. I'd been studied, analyzed, broken down into component parts, and systematically manipulated with scientific precision. Mrs. Crawford, Marcus said gently, using my married name before catching himself. I'm sorry, Victoria. We should document all of this and give it to your father's attorneys. This is evidence. I nodded numbly. The tech specialist copied everything while I wandered through the rest of the apartment in a daze. In the bedroom closet, I found something else. A box hidden under Daniel's winter clothes. Inside were burner phones. 3 of them. I turned one on, and it immediately buzzed with messages. From Sarah. Hundreds of messages between Daniel and Sarah, going back 2 full years. I scrolled through them, each one a fresh knife wound. Victoria suspects nothing. She's so trusting it's almost pathetic. Did you see her face when I told her I loved her? She actually teared up. This is almost too easy. 6 more months and we'll have everything. Then we disappear and leave these idiots holding the bag. I almost feel bad for her, almost. Then I remember the inheritance and I get over it. There were photos too, Daniel and Sarah in hotel rooms, on vacation together, vacations they'd taken during business trips I'd believed were legitimate. Intimate photos that proved this wasn't just a con, but a genuine affair. They'd been building a real relationship while using me as a cash cow. I forwarded every message, every photo, to my father's attorney. Then I turned off the phone and added it to the evidence pile. When we finished documenting everything, I took one last look around the apartment. This place that was supposed to be our home. This life that was supposed to be my future. Then I called the landlord and broke the lease. I donated all the furniture to charity. I wanted nothing from this place. Nothing that carried the taint of Daniel's lies. 2 weeks after the wedding, my father sat me down in his study with Richard Morrison and another man I didn't recognize. Victoria, this is Detective James Walsh from the NYPD's Financial Crimes Unit. He's been investigating Daniel and Sarah, and he's discovered something you need to know about. My stomach dropped. What now? Detective Walsh pulled out a folder. Ms. Hayes, we've been tracing Daniel Crawford's background. His real name is David Novak. He's originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and this isn't his first time running this type of con. I felt the room tilt. What do you mean, first time? In 2018, 6 years ago, David Novak, then calling himself Derek Chase, married a woman named Amanda Berkeley in Austin, Texas. She was the daughter of a successful tech entrepreneur worth approximately $30 million. Derek courted Amanda for 3 years, married her, and within 6 months had convinced her father to invest $5 million in a fake startup. When the father started asking questions, Derek disappeared, took the $5 million, and vanished. I couldn't breathe. He did this before to someone else. Amanda Berkeley attempted suicide 2 months after he disappeared, Detective Walsh continued quietly. She survived, but she's never fully recovered. The family chose not to press charges because they couldn't locate David Novak. He'd used fake identification, and the trail went cold. How did you find this? My father asked, his voice tight with controlled rage. Fingerprints from his arrest. They matched prints from the Texas investigation. David Novak has been running variations of this con for at least a decade. We believe there are at least 3 other victims we haven't identified yet. 3 other victims. 3 other women who'd loved this man, trusted him, believed his lies. 3 other families who'd been robbed, and I'd almost been the 4th. Where is Amanda Berkeley now? I asked. She lives in Austin still. We contacted her about potentially testifying. She's understandably hesitant to relive the trauma. I want to talk to her, said immediately. I need to talk to her. Detective Walsh and my father exchanged glances. Victoria, that might not be advisable, Richard warned. She could be called as a witness. Any communication between you could complicate the legal... I don't care about the legal complications, I interrupted. There's another woman out there who went through what I'm going through. Who knows exactly how this feels. I need to talk to her, please. After much debate, they agreed to arrange a phone call. 3 days later, I sat in my father's study with my hands shaking as I dialed Amanda Berkeley's number. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Ms. Berkeley, my name is Victoria Hayes. Daniel Crawford, or David Novak, or whatever his real name is. He almost married me too. Silence on the other end, then quietly. I saw the news. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, I said. I should be apologizing to you. If someone had caught him after what he did to you, he never could have done this to me. It's not your fault, Amanda said, and her voice cracked. God, it's not your fault at all. These men, they're professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. We talked for 2 hours. Amanda told me everything. How Derek, Daniel, David had been perfect, attentive, romantic, seemingly genuine. How he'd proposed after 2 years. How her father had loved him, trusted him, welcomed him into the family business. The worst part, Amanda said, is that I still sometimes miss him. Even knowing what he was, what he did, there's this stupid part of my brain that misses the man I thought he was. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic, I said, tears streaming down my face. I understand completely. I still catch myself wanting to call him when something funny happens. Then I remember, and it's like losing him all over again. Does it get better? Amanda asked. Please tell me it gets better. I don't know yet, I admitted. It's only been 2 weeks for me, but I'm trying. I'm fighting back this time. He's not getting away with it. Good, Amanda said fiercely. Destroy him. For both of us. For all of us. We stayed in touch after that. Amanda and I formed an unlikely friendship, bound by our shared trauma. She flew to New York for the trial. She testified about what David Novak had done to her family. Her testimony was devastating. She broke down on the stand, describing how she'd tried to end her life because she couldn't live with the shame and betrayal. The jury was in tears. Even the judge looked shaken. But I'm getting ahead of myself. A month after the wedding, I got another surprise. Jennifer, Daniel's sister-in-law, came to see me. She looked haggard, like she hadn't slept in weeks. I need to tell you something else, she said. Something I didn't say before because I was too scared. My father and I sat with her in the living room while she twisted her hands nervously. Sarah threatened me, Jennifer said. But she also paid me $50,000 deposited into an offshore account she set up in my name. She said it was insurance, that if I ever told anyone what I knew, she'd claim I was part of the con, that she'd show evidence I took money to help them. But you didn't help them, my father said. No, but I took the money, Jennifer cried. I was terrified. My husband had just lost his job. We had 2 kids and a mortgage. Sarah said if I kept quiet, the money was mine, a gift to help us through hard times. If I talked, she'd destroy me. So I took it, and then I was trapped. She pulled out bank statements showing the deposit and the account information. I want to give it all back, every penny, and I want to testify to everything, the threats, the payment, all of it. I can't live with this guilt anymore. My father's attorney took Jennifer's statement and the financial records. It was another piece of evidence showing how thoroughly Sarah had planned this con. She'd bought Jennifer's silence, created leverage against her, and ensured she had a scapegoat if things went wrong. The depth of my sister's manipulation was breathtaking and horrifying. 6 weeks after the wedding, I finally worked up the courage to visit my mother's grave. I hadn't been there since the wedding planning started. I'd been too busy, too distracted with Daniel and the future I thought I was building. I sat on the grass beside her headstone and talked to her like I used to when I was younger. I wish you were here, Mom, I whispered. You would have seen through them. You always had good instincts about people. You would have warned me. The wind rustled through the trees, and I imagined it was her response. Sarah's in jail now. Did you know that? Your daughter, your firstborn, is in jail for trying to rob Dad and destroy me. How did this happen? How did she become this person? I thought about Sarah as she'd been when we were kids. She'd been protective of me. When I was bullied in middle school, Sarah had confronted my bullies. When our mother died, Sarah had held me while I cried. She'd been my hero. When did that change? When did the protective big sister become the predator? I think she always resented me, I said to the headstone. She was always the accomplished one, but you and Dad always showed me more affection. She worked harder, achieved more, but I was the one who got the hugs and the praise. Maybe I didn't see it because I was too busy being loved. Maybe I should have noticed she was hurting. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't my fault. Children don't owe their siblings equal parental affection. That was on Sarah to process like a healthy adult, not to weaponize into a decade-long revenge plot. I'm going to be okay, I told my mother's grave. It doesn't feel like it now, but I will be. I'm stronger than they thought. Stronger than I thought. The trial finally began 3 months after the wedding. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case. They had the security footage. They had the financial records. They had Daniel's psychological profiles of me. They had the burner phones with all the messages. They had Amanda's testimony about the previous con. They had Jennifer's testimony about the bribes and threats. Daniel and Sarah's defense attorneys tried everything. They claimed the affair was real, that they'd fallen genuinely in love and the financial crimes were unrelated. They claimed Sarah had been embezzling to cover gambling debts, not as part of a planned con. They claimed Daniel hadn't known about Sarah's financial crimes, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The messages between them clearly showed a coordinated plan. The timeline proved they'd been working together from the start. When it was my turn to testify, I walked into that courtroom wearing armor made of truth. I'd practiced my testimony dozens of times with Richard. I knew every question they'd ask. I was ready. The prosecution attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Park, led me through my story. how I'd met Daniel, how he'd courted me, how I'd trusted him, how I'd loved him. Miss Hayes, did you have any indication that Daniel Crawford was not who he claimed to be? No, I said clearly. He was extraordinarily skilled at deception. He studied me, learned my weaknesses, and exploited them systematically. I trusted him because he gave me no reason not to trust him. He was a professional con artist, and I was his mark. Daniel's attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, tried to rattle me during cross-examination. Isn't it true, Miss Hayes, that you come from a wealthy family and that you've always been somewhat sheltered? I come from a family that built its wealth through honest work, I responded. And if being sheltered means I was raised to trust people and see the good in them, then yes, I suppose I was sheltered. I didn't realize that made me deserve to be conned. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating the extent of Mr. Crawford's manipulation because you're angry about the affair? I looked directly at the jury. The affair hurt, but what hurt more was discovering that the man I loved never existed, that I'd spent 5 years of my life loving a character, a performance. The financial con is what brought criminal charges. The emotional con is what destroyed me as a person. And yes, I'm angry, but my anger doesn't change the facts. The jury was paying close attention. Several of them were nodding. Sarah's attorney tried a different approach when my testimony touched on her role. Miss Hayes, your sister Sarah has been a practicing attorney for 8 years. Isn't it possible she made some legitimate mistakes in handling your father's estate rather than deliberately defrauding him? Legitimate mistakes don't involve setting up shell companies under fake names, yes, I replied. Legitimate mistakes don't involve forging signatures on transfer documents. Legitimate mistakes don't involve sending messages to your co-conspirator, saying Victoria is so gullible this is almost too easy. My sister didn't make mistakes. She made choices. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt lighter. I'd told my truth. I'd faced them both. Daniel had stared at me the entire time, his expression unreadable. Sarah had looked down, refusing to meet my eyes. The verdict came after 4 hours of deliberation, as I mentioned before. Guilty on all counts for both of them. But the story doesn't end with the guilty verdict, because there were consequences beyond the legal ones, consequences that rippled through our entire family and social circle. Daniel's parents, Frank and Margaret Crawford, came to see me 2 weeks after the verdict. They looked like they'd aged a decade in 3 months. Victoria, Margaret said, her voice breaking, we are so profoundly sorry. We had no idea what our son was capable of. We raised him better than this, or at least we thought we did. Frank's hands were shaking. We've disowned him, changed our will. He'll inherit nothing from us. And we want you to know that if there's anything we can do to help you heal from what he did. There isn't, I said, not unkindly. But I appreciate the gesture, and I don't blame you. You didn't know. None of us knew. That's what made him so effective. They left in tears. I felt sorry for them. They'd lost their son, too, in a different way. They'd discovered the child they raised was a monster, and now they had to live with that knowledge. My father's business also took a hit. When word got out that his own daughter had been embezzling from him, some clients questioned his judgment. How could they trust a man who couldn't even spot fraud in his own family? My father handled it with typical grace. He held a press conference addressing the situation directly. My daughter Sarah betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, he said. She exploited our family bond to commit crimes. But let me be clear, this does not reflect on the security or integrity of Hayes Automotive Group. We've implemented new oversight systems, new checks and balances. And if anything, this experience has made us more vigilant, more secure than ever before. Most of his clients stayed, a few left, but the business survived. My own career took an unexpected turn. After the trial, I was offered a position at a nonprofit organization called Romance Fraud Prevention Alliance. They wanted me to be a spokesperson, to share my story and help other victims recognize the warning signs of relationship cons. At first, I said no. I didn't want to be defined by my trauma. I didn't want to be that woman who got conned forever. But then I thought about Amanda in Austin, about Jennifer who'd been too scared to speak, about all the other victims out there who were suffering in silence, ashamed to admit they'd been fooled. So I said yes. I started giving talks at community centers, at universities, at law enforcement conferences. I shared my story, the whole humiliating thing, because I realized that shame only has power when we hide it. When we speak our truth, shame loses its grip. These cons happen to smart people, I'd tell audiences. They happen to educated people, successful people, careful people. Because the con artists are smarter, more educated, more successful at lying than we are at detecting lies. This is not your fault. This is not my fault. This is their crime, not our failure. After each talk, victims would approach me, sometimes crying, always grateful that someone understood, that someone had survived and was thriving. One woman told me, "I thought I was the only one stupid enough to fall for something like this. Hearing you speak made me realize I'm not stupid. I'm human, and humans trust. That's not a flaw. That's what makes us human." She was right. Trust isn't weakness, it's courage. The real weakness was Daniel and Sarah's inability to feel genuine human connection, their need to exploit and manipulate instead of love and build. 4 years after the trial, as I mentioned before, I met Marcus. And let me tell you more about how that relationship developed, because it wasn't easy for me to open my heart again. On our second date, Marcus asked me directly, "What are you afraid of?" I almost ended things right there. Who asked that on a second date? But I respected the directness, so I told him the truth. "I'm afraid you're not who you seem to be. I'm afraid that in 2 years I'll discover this is all an act. I'm afraid I'll never be able to trust my own judgment again because I was so catastrophically wrong before." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Those are reasonable fears given what you experienced. So here's what I propose. Complete transparency. You want to see my financial records? You can see them. You want to meet my ex-wife and ask her about me? I'll arrange it. You want to verify every story I tell you? Verify away. I have nothing to hide." "That seems exhausting for you," I said. "It's not exhausting if it helps you feel safe," Marcus replied. "Victoria, I understand that you need to build trust slowly. I'm not going anywhere. We move at your pace, always." And he kept that promise. For our entire courtship, Marcus was an open book. I did verify things. Embarrassingly, I did run that background check. I did talk to his ex-wife, who told me he was a good man who deserved happiness, and if you hurt him, I'll come after you. Slowly, carefully, I learned to trust again, not blindly, never blindly again, but genuinely. Our wedding, the small, simple one, was everything my first wedding wasn't. It was honest, real, built on a foundation of truth instead of lies. When Marcus said, "I love you" in his vows, I believed him, because he'd spent a year proving it with actions, not just words. 5 years after that nightmare wedding day, I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand something crucial. Being con doesn't define you. Surviving it does. Yes, I was betrayed by my sister and my fiancé. Yes, I was manipulated and used. Yes, my wedding became a national scandal. But I also exposed them, stopped them, helped put them in prison, rebuilt my life, found real love, started a career helping others, had a daughter who will grow up knowing her mother is strong. The little flower girl, Emma, who couldn't keep a secret, she's the hero of this story. Her innocent words saved me from years of being systematically robbed and emotionally destroyed. She's 9 now, and I make sure she knows how important she was, how her bravery, even accidental bravery, changed everything. Sometimes heroes come in the smallest packages. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected sources. And sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of your real life. My name is Victoria Hayes Chen. I'm 34 years old. I'm a survivor, an advocate, a wife, a mother, and proof that you can build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. And if my sister Sarah or David Novak or whatever his real name is ever gets out of prison and sees the story, I want them to know one thing. Thank you. Thank you for showing me what I'm capable of. Thank you for teaching me to be careful with my trust. Thank you for failing at destroying me, because I'm still here. I'm thriving. And you're exactly where you deserve to be. That's the real revenge. That's the real victory. Living well, living honestly, living free. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story.